And I remember that one day in November, just not being able to sleep, the anxiety, the stress, the nightmares, which is continuous.
I do not know you, but I am your brother.
You do not know me, but I am your protector.
I will run into a burning building to save your life.
Though I do not know your name, I will take a bullet for you.
Though we've never met,
I believe in duty and sacrifice
of self.
Your family is my family.
Is my family. Your life is my duty.
What's going on, guys? Time for another episode of Behind the Uniforms. For those of you who have never seen the show before, the way that it works is that we invite active, retired first responders and veterans onto the show to share some stories behind the uniforms, tell people a little bit about them, about a good day, about a bad day. And if you haven't seen the show before, we do keep a bottle of bourbon here and an empty glass on the side for those men and women who will unfortunately never be able to join us for this show because they made the ultimate sacrifice. So without further ado, tell everyone who you are.
Hi, I'm Veasna Roeun from Danbury, Connecticut, and I've been a resident in Connecticut ever since we came to America.
Excellent. Where'd you come from originally?
Cambodia. My family survived the killing fields in Cambodia, and we came here in '83. Grew up in Connecticut. Grew up in Danbury, actually, most of my entire life, and joined the military in '98. Spent some time in Bosnia after 9/11 and Afghanistan. In 0607.
Yep.
As you heard with Travis Gaffey, who was here last week, was he?
Yeah, it was on pretty recently. Travis is a good guy.
Specialist Gaffey, great guy. A guy that I definitely want by my side in a firefight.
I've heard that a number of times about Travis. So where do you want to start? Do you want to talk a little bit about coming here to America? Do you want to talk about a good day, a bad day? Share some stories with everybody.
You know what? Whatever you want to hear, I guess. We can go to a good day, we can go to a bad day. I do want to talk about how my life has changed since getting out of the military.
Please, let's start there.
Well, I joined the military. Actually, I joined the Guard after high school back in '98, and not shortly after 9/11 happened, obviously. Coincidentally, 9/11 happened while we were on active duty in New Jersey, and that day sticks in my mind probably more than many other days because on September 10th we were going down range, going down to one of the firing ranges to do platoon live fire exercises, and I remember the morning on 9/11 when we were getting up at dark 30, probably before sunrise, getting ready, preparing it was a company live fire exercise, so there's 3 full platoons out there in the field, and I remember doing our dry runs right after chow, right after about around 6-7 o'clock. We were doing our dry runs. A couple hours later, we were doing a second dry run, and during that second dry run was when we were told that we needed to turn in our cell phones because it was interfering with the pop-up targets. First I've ever heard of this. So they took away our cell phones. We still weren't told anything yet. The other platoons were doing their second dry run, and then right before we were scheduled to do our blank fire run, the tower door kicks open, and I could hear my company commander screaming for his first sergeants and his platoon for the first sergeant for his leadership. So for the platoon sergeants, the lieutenants, he was screaming for him, and I thought that there was a fracture site incident because it sounded like someone was getting in a heap of trouble from the tone of his voice. So we were down there, and this is shortly after 9:30 or so. And the platoon sergeant PL comes down, and they tell us that, listen, we're at war. Of course, none of us couldn't really absorb what was going on. We were told very little. We didn't understand. And one of the soldiers asked, well, what do you mean we're at war? And that's when the news was broken to us that 2 planes flew into the World Trade Center, and our nuke submarines are now out there patrolling, and we're at ThreatCon Delta. So it was surreal. I'll tell you, it was definitely surreal because that morning, the morning of 9/10, when we left the main post out into the shooting ranges, it was an open post. It was an open post. I could tell you, fast forward to sometime in the afternoon, before noon in the evening, going back to the main post, it was like a fire base. I mean, they had Humvees on every entrance with triple concertina wire. The planes were flying in and out. So the world changed in a matter of 24 hours for us, being on active duty, stationed in New Jersey, Fort Dix, New Jersey, which was only a few miles away from New York City. So fast forward to 4 or 5 days later when we decided, you know what, let's get the platoon back down range, just get them going on the live fire exercises again. Let's prepare for war. I remember one of the I remember we were downrange, and halfway downrange during a live fire, my platoon leader, my lieutenant, stopped the exercise, and he had us all get up and get in a horseshoe, and he directed us downrange, and he says, you see that out there about 30 miles out? And we could see it. We could clearly see what was out there. It was a plume of smoke that was coming from the World Trade Center. So from 30 miles out in New Jersey, wow, you can see that. And it was heartbreaking. It was really, really heartbreaking. It was confused. There was a lot of anger, a lot of confusion, a lot of anxiety, but really just a lot of guys who wanted to get there. We just get us out of here and get us in the battlefield. Obviously, that didn't happen because the Rangers jumped in first with Special Forces and CIA. But we definitely get our fill only a few years later, back in 06, 07.
Gotcha. When did you serve with Travis?
Let's see. I was with Charlie Company down there in Bristol, from 2000 to 2001 when I switched over to Bravo Company. I think I probably served with him for about 5 years, 4 or 5 years. He came over shortly after me, after Bosnia, after I came back from Bosnia.
Gotcha. Now, one of the things that he talked about was sort of reacclimating to civilian life and the challenges that he faced there. Share a little bit of what you went through.
You know, I came home, and we came home in the spring of 07. Just taking it easy. So it wasn't, I started school in late August, September. I went back to college, and everything was fine. You know, Afghanistan was there, but it was, for myself personally, I didn't really get the chance to feel it. You know, I really didn't get it. It really hasn't hit me yet about where I've been and what I've done.
Sure.
So I could tell you, you know, things were a little bit easier coming home, normal, I guess you could say normal to a lot of civilians, going back to school and not working yet, just keeping my heads in the books. It wasn't until, I want to say November, when it all just came crashing down, out of nowhere. You know, it's when you least expect it. It wasn't, because I remember that incident where I think I stayed awake for probably about almost 48 hours straight. Stayed for about 48 hours straight, because that was when it came down like a waterfall. It was just all the emotions that you didn't get to feel, that I wasn't able to feel. I just couldn't. Being a frontline leader, you really didn't have the time to process those emotions while you're out there, because you're busy carrying out the mission. You're caring about your men. You're making sure that everybody gets home safe. And so you really didn't have the opportunity to process it until you get home. But when you do get home, it's really not in the forefront. It's back there hidden somewhere.
Sure. And
I remember that one day in November, you know, just not being able to sleep, the anxiety, the stress, the nightmares, were just continuous for whatever reason. And a buddy of mine took me to the VA hospital, and they took me in. They, you know, diagnosed me, and they kept me there for a couple of hours just so I could rest. But I guess from there on, it got better, because now I realized what I was dealing with after the war. You know, you're dealing with emotions. Now you got to confront the demons that were there,
sure,
to stay in the shadows. So it was quite an emotional ride, I guess you could say.
What advice can you pass along to guys who are dealing with this, or may not have yet started dealing with it, like the journey you went through?
You know, it's normal. It's normal. There's nothing wrong with you. Absolutely nothing. You're not broken, as some would put it. It's normal. A lot of folks don't experience what a soldier experiences, what a Marine or who's ever been in combat experiences. Matter of fact, a very small percentage of those in uniform don't experience combat to the level of an infantryman, frontline fighters. So it's normal. Help is out there. You know, and it's sadly coming back since Iraq, since 04, since our unit was deployed to Iraq. Since then, we've probably had about 6 suicides, I want to say half a dozen suicides in our entire battalion. Suicides. So there's nothing wrong with you guys. There's absolutely nothing wrong. You just got to reach out to your buddies, reach out to us, any of us. You could be someone who's never served with me in uniform, or served with any other guys in uniform, in the same unit, in the same battalion. But the stories are the same. You know, the stories are similar, if not the same. The taste of dirt and the taste of blood and sweat is still the same. So we know. You know, the guys who've been there know, and you just got to reach out and you just got to talk to us. It's hard talking to professionals, psychiatrists, psychologists. It's even harder talking to folks who probably don't get it, you know, because they weren't there.
Right.
You know, you hear that famous saying that you weren't there. Right. So you just got to talk about it. You got to reach out to your buddies, and I think myself personally found a lot of success in that. I found a lot of success in keeping in touch with the guys I served with. They're now my Facebook friends. You know, I have them on myself, and I still talk to the guys I served with in 06, 07, and 01, 02. So you just got to talk. You can't keep it bottled up inside. You just got to talk to somebody.
Any particularly good memories from serving overseas, or difficult memories that you want to share?
You know what? I'll start with the difficult memory and transition to a really good one. Sure. This is actually a really good one. So back in November, we had a platoon-sized mission and Travis was a part of it, and they had a huge platoon-sized mission that was supplemented with the Afghan National Army. It was an overnight mission. My squad was left back to secure our forward observation base in Lagwin province. So we were doing guard duty back home, and what happened was, as the platoon was leaving, they're closing down the operations and leaving and coming back to base, they were ambushed, and it was a pretty bad ambush. I think I was called into the Tactical Operations Command, being that I was the highest ranking non-commissioned officer in charge, and a lot of the missions over there were ran by E6s, staff sergeants. So I remember being called to the TOC and talking to the intel officer who's turning on the radio enough for us to hear what was going on, and you could hear the firefight in the background. You could hear the call for support, and that moment we ramped up. We ramped up and got my guys all ready. 15 of us left back at base. We woke up the auxiliary support, which was the local nationals, the Afghans, who were trained to secure our base and do guard duty. So now they were left doing guard duty, and whatever American forces we had left, kinetic American forces we had left, were ramped up, got in our Humvees, and prepared to go out. As all 15 of us was prepared to go out, and mind you, the battle space was very big. So our platoon of 55 guys were responsible for an area the size of Connecticut.
Jeez. Okay,
that's because everybody was focused in on Iraq. That was when Iraq had the surge where they had over 130,000 troops. While in Afghanistan, you only had about 12,000 to 14,000 combat troops.
Wow.
Okay, and 20,000 U.S. troops total in the whole entire country. So 55 guys responsible for an area the size of Connecticut, and 75% of your platoon is out there with the Afghan National Army, and they can't move because one of the Humvees was blown up and disabled. So they're out there stuck in an ambush, and it was getting late. It was around 8 p.m., somewhere around 8 p.m., 2000 hours, and we were getting ready to roll out when the call came in from the brigade commander, the Spartan 6 is what we call him. His call sign was Spartan 6. He was a 10th Mountain Colonel who was in charge of all the combat troops in Afghanistan, and the orders came down was not to let us go out there until support showed up from Jalalabad, which is probably about an hour and 20-minute drive from Fob Metro line. So now we have 15 guys who could hear our buddies on the radio. We could hear all the action on the radio, and we were itching just to get out. We waited. We weren't allowed to leave the wire until support came because of the history of engagement and violence in that area, that one particular area, known as the Dalshaw Valley. So now the task force that was already out there established a patrol base, a hasty patrol base, that was later, but a year later would be built up to an actual fire base. But back then we called it Fire Base Punisher. And so they were out there, we're waiting, mind you, support did not show up until about 0400 hours the next day, 4 in the morning. 4 in the morning. All of us were awake. So we weren't happy. Good thing about that was there was not much action going on the other side. I guess the enemies had to sleep too. So we waited until about 0400. Luckily, they reinforced me with about 50 guys from Jalabad of the 10th Mountain Division. And 50 of them showed up. And we drove out there without much incident. We get out there without much incident. 10 minutes to us showing up and resupplying the guys and getting the Hammett out there to retrieve the Humvee. In the middle of all that going on, this is 10 minutes after just showing up. And I've just walked down from the patrol base. The platoon was positioned on a hilltop, one of the highest grounds that we could get, that we can secure. And I was just up there talking to the leadership, letting them know what was going on, who we came with, how many we came with, and what we can expect. 2 minutes after I gotten back from the patrol base, I walked down the hill to where my position was, which was the northernmost position in a dry creek bed with about 3 or 4 other Humvees. We rolled pretty deep. We showed up there with about 12, 13 Humvees vehicles, with the first 3 being exposed in a dry creek bed. 2 minutes after getting down to my position and getting my guys to pull out the ammo crate so that we could resupply the guys up in the hill, I heard a thump. And myself and a couple other soldiers heard it. So immediately you start counting down, because then you got to determine how far it's out by how many seconds it takes for it to impact. And probably about after 5 or 6 seconds, that's when the explosion happened. And the mortar rounds came in. It was probably the 3rd or 4th one that hit the sweet spot in our defense. So it hit only a few feet away from one of our mortar positions. Jeez. And we actually got that on video. You guys weren't really expecting that to go down the way it did. So immediately, that one round took out our intel officer and 2 of our specialists. Jeez. So 2 of our specialists and our intel officer got hit. They were literally 2 or 3 feet away from it. We thought they were dead. We thought from what I heard from the other guys who were up top, they thought they were dead. They ran over there, and those guys were just hurt really, really bad. Really, luckily they survived. Wow. It was a long recovery from them, but they survived. So as that was going on, one of my guys was able to identify where the mortar fire was coming from, and immediately we just opened fire. As we're opening fire, I'm calling in for a fire mission, which was to Gaffey and his team, and they were able to lob off quite a few rounds and stop the mortars from coming in. Then shortly after that, a firefight ensued, and not too long. It wasn't that long of a firefight until we were able to secure the area, and then the birds came in. Unknown to me was that during the firefight, during all of this that was going on, more casualties happened. So they brought in 3 medevac birds for our group, because 15, I think about 12, 15 guys were injured. Coalition forces, U.S. and Afghan National Army, and some of our contractors. So they brought in 3 birds and 2 Apaches, and they didn't want to take any risks, so they sent a drone along the way, just to keep an eye on things. And along with the drone, they also sent an air support, which is flying pretty high, but you could see the plumes in the sky that there was a bomber up there, just in case something went something went south. So when the Apaches came in with the escort, the fighting stopped. The one thing that scares the Taliban and the fighters up in the mountains are Apaches, because there's nowhere that they can go where the Apaches can't see them. Sure. So they'll run and hide. The fighting stopped. So the fighting stopped. The Apaches came in. The air was secured. We got our 3 guys out, and somehow someone heard that we have about 8 guys in this platoon who weren't American citizens yet and need to be sworn in a couple of days. So we were given an escort all the way back to the fire base, which is about an hour-and-a-half drive. And let me tell you, man, when you have close air support at the palm of your hands, that's the closest you're ever going to feel to being God. Because if things went down, all you had to do was make a simple call, and they'll let loose right on the target. Matter of fact, we almost let loose on the Afghan security force who came out to support us when they heard what was going on. Of course, they got in their little Hilux trucks with about 14 guys in the back with RPGs sticking out, no uniforms. So the Apache pilots saw them from a couple miles away and radioed down on me, letting me know what was going on. And I almost gave them the order to shoot until I realized, wait, we're pretty close to one of the Afghan security checkpoints. So I had my gunner look out there with the binoculars, and he was able to identify a couple of guys that he knew in the security force. So luckily, we were able to identify them just in time. And I let the Apache pilots know that those were friendlies. So those guys got real lucky that we were able to see them in time, because they were hightailing it towards us. And as far as the Apache pilots knew, they could have been a threat. Yeah, the enemy. So we were able to get everybody back safe. A few days later, we made it to Bagram. And for our final interview for those guys who weren't American citizens yet, me being one of them. So I remember walking into the State Department office, and the guy at the desk was talking about a terrible firefight where 15 guys were hurt. They had to call in 3 medevac birds, and everybody was out there. And I look at him, I go, yeah, that was our guy. I was Raider 2. That was my call sign. I was Raider 2. You probably heard me on the TAC. And he looks at me, he goes, no way. And so a conversation went back and forth between me and him, where it came to a point that he asked me 3 simple questions and shook my hand and congratulated me because I've just become an American citizen. So on November 11th, Veterans Day in 2006, I was finally sworn in as an American citizen.
That's awesome.
On foreign soils. Myself and about 8 other guys from my platoon.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How does that feel looking back on that?
You know, everything happens for a reason. I really do believe everything happens for a reason. It's one of my proudest and happiest moments. It's a culmination of the things that happened in my life with my family, being war refugees, you know, and being able to make it here and come to America, and finally being able to give something back and being rewarded with something that's so priceless. And to us, to me, that's an American citizenship.
Powerful story, my friend.
It's a life. It's a life.
Well, brother, I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing these. Guys, it's going to take you 2 seconds to hit the share button. These stories about the men and women behind the uniforms, not easy to share, and so we appreciate that you help get that message out there as well, to show that just like you and I, these men and women just want to go home to their families at the end of the day. So thank you all for watching. Thank you, brother. God bless America.